The moment the world held its breath came not with thunder, but with silence. It was July 6th, a bright morning in Rome. The Vatican courtyard was glowing under the summer sun, where thousands had gathered for a global broadcast special. Addressed by Pope Leo XIV, cameras zoomed, children waved Vatican flags, and the crowd hummed with reverence. What was meant to be a routine appearance, perhaps another step in Leo's rising international peace, mission turned into a moment that would echo through history like the sound of a bell tolling at midnight. Just seconds after beginning his address, Pope Leo XIV's knees buckled. His face, once radiant with warmth and the gravity of holy office, turned pale. He clutched his chest. The crucifix in his hand slipped to the ground. Gasps filled the air. Screams followed. The camera stayed rolling. The world watched, frozen, as the Vicar of Christ collapsed live on global television. For a brief second, time itself seemed to stop. Cardinals rushed forward, but one man, one soul moved faster than anyone else. It was Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. He didn't panic. He didn't run. He fell to his knees beside the Holy Father. He placed one hand on Pope Leo's shoulder, the other on his heart, whispering something only heaven could hear. Then he lifted his eyes not to the crowd, not to the cameras, but toward the sky, as if pleading not to the people, but to God himself. That single act, his presence, his prayer, his unshaken calm ignited both outrage and praise across the world. Some called it staged. Others called it prophetic. But the question on every journalist's tongue, every theologian's parchment, every faithful believer's lips was simple. Why did Cardinal Tagle kneel instead of scream? And perhaps more chilling, what did he whisper to the Pope? In those final seconds, initial reports from the Vatican described it as a sudden medical collapse. Whispers in the crowd mentioned heat stroke. Others speculated foul play. One witness, a nun from Argentina, swore she saw a flash of light just before Leo fell. Like a sword drawn in midair, she said with trembling hands, holding her rosary. But it was what happened after the fall that has the Church in turmoil, because in the hours that followed, no one could find Cardinal Tagle. Gone, vanished. From Vatican grounds, no public statement, no press conference. Not even the Swiss Guard could explain his absence. And in the silence, rumors filled the void. Was he praying in isolation? Was he under investigation? Or was he receiving a divine vision, one that would decide the fate of the Church itself? Then came the leaked footage. A Vatican staffer anonymously released a second camera angle, unbroadcasted to the public. It shows something astonishing. As Pope Leo fell just milliseconds before his collapse, Cardinal Tagle had already turned as if he knew, as if something had pulled his spirit forward before the body of the Pope hit the floor. He was not surprised. He was ready. The world watched that clip on repeat. Millions shared it. Billions commented. He knew this was a sign. Was this the day the next pope was chosen, not by man, but by heaven? And then came the prophecy, an old document, stored deep within the Vatican archives. Written in 1901 by a mystic nun, long forgotten, resurfaced through a mysterious leak. It read, "The lion shall rise and fall within one season, and the dove shall kneel, not to mourn, but to hear the whisper of Michael. From the shadow of collapse, the bearer of mercy shall be lifted not by men, but by tongues of fire. The lion, Leo, the dove, Tagle, the world." Already on edge after the sudden death of Pope Francis earlier this year, erupted again. Talk shows, Catholic networks, spiritual YouTubers, everyone weighed in. Some hailed it as the beginning of a spiritual rebirth. Others feared the start of a holy war between old and new forces within the Church. Still, the Vatican remained silent until yesterday. in a quiet corner of St. Peter's Basilica. At 3:33 p.m., the hour of mercy figure reappeared. Cardinal Tagle, his face was calm, eyes clear, robes untouched. He had returned not with fanfare, but with fire in his gaze. He walked past reporters, past the crowds, straight to the very crucifix Pope Leo had dropped during his fall. He knelt again, and this time he wept no words. Just tears. When a journalist tried to ask, "Cardinal, where have you been?" he responded with only one sentence: "In the garden." The Vatican later confirmed he had spent 3 full days in complete silence, locked in prayer beneath the ancient Vatican gardens where early martyrs are buried. No food, no phone, no light except candlelight. It was said he carried only scripture, a single rosary, and a torn letter allegedly written by Pope Leo XIV before his collapse, a letter no one else has seen. Now, inside the Vatican, a storm is brewing. Some cardinals praise Tagle, calling him the shepherd of the next era. Others whisper rebellion, claiming he has become too powerful, too soon. Papal authority hasn't shifted, but the spirit of the people has. Millions are calling for Tagle to lead. And yet, the Holy See remains quiet. Pope Leo XIV survived, but remains under strict medical care. His next public appearance, if it happens, will be during his planned trip to Turkey Pilgrimage of Unity. But the question remains, will he walk alone, or will Tagle walk beside him as co-shepherd or successor? There are reports that during his 3-day retreat, Tagle experienced a vision. The whispers speak of an encounter not with Christ, but with Mary herself. Some say she gave him a message. Others say she gave him a warning. What is certain is that everything has changed. The Church is at a crossroads, and billions now look not to power, not to politics, but to grace, to the still, small voice that echoes through collapsing thrones, trembling hands, and one faithful cardinal who knelt when the world screamed. This is Teachings of Grace's sacred space for those watching history unfold not just on earth, but in heaven's shadow. And the question we leave you with now: was the moment Pope Leo fell the moment heaven lifted another? As dusk fell over Rome that same evening, clouds gathered above the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, not with rain, but with a thunderous stillness, as though heaven itself was holding its breath. The bronze doors of the papal apartments remained shut. No incense drifted, no bells rang. For the first time since the conclave, the heart of the Catholic Church pulsed in eerie silence. But inside the Apostolic Palace, an unspoken war was beginning. The papacy of Leo XIV, born in the shadow of Pope Francis's death, had promised continuity, compassion, and the lifting of the poor. Yet now, that promise was hanging by a thread. A secret faction known by whispers as Custodes Throni, guardians of the throne, had long feared this very moment. The rise of the merciful dove, symbol they believed would betray tradition for illusion, love for leniency, truth for modern compromise. And to them, Cardinal Tagle had become the embodiment of that threat, unbeknownst to the world. The very night Pope Leo collapsed, a locked chamber inside the Vatican library was opened. It hadn't been touched since 1958, the year Pope Pius XII died. Inside lay a scroll, not written by any pope, but received in the trance of a stigmatist nun from southern Italy. Lucia Filomena, buried without honors, her cause for sainthood suppressed. The scroll had been dismissed for decades, too wild, too mystical, too impossible, but now its words were being whispered among the curia once again. When the lion stumbles and the dove prays in ashes, a shadow will move among the columns. He will carry a torch cloaked in honey, but inside it burns the mouth of Leviathan. Trust not the applause, for what draws men may be what blinds them. Only the tears of Peter will reveal the bride's path through fire. Some within the Vatican believe this prophecy refers to Cardinal Tagle, but others believe it warns against him. The division is no longer subtle. One group, young priests, laity missionaries, women religious, have begun calling him Shepherd of the Dawn. They believe he has chosen to lead the Church through the valley of purification, to tear down corruption and restore the wounded bride of Christ to her former radiance. But the other camp, older, silent, sharp-pied, whispers only one name. In the shadows, Parolin. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the long-time Secretary of State under Francis. Calculated, brilliant, respected, and, many say, dangerously patient. He did not move when Pope Leo fell. He did not kneel. He simply stood, watching. And when Tagle disappeared, Parolin met in secret with 3 cardinals, each from a different continent, each a former electing voice in the 2025 conclave. What was discussed in that meeting has not been disclosed, but shortly afterward, confidential memo was circulated within the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Clarify the limits of liturgical innovation and review public theological statements from all curial cardinals made in the last 6 months. It was not signed, but insiders claim its author was Parolin himself. Meanwhile, Cardinal Tagle, fresh from his 3-day seclusion, has begun gathering with a quiet circle of cardinals, many from Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Men who understand persecution, who have buried the martyrs, who have preached the gospel not from golden pulpits, but from blood-stained altars in jungles and slums. One of them, Cardinal Sibi Okeke of Nigeria, spoke privately to a journalist from Aveniri and said, "The fire has begun, and we must choose. Do we preserve the ashes or carry the flame? But the flame may burn brighter and more dangerously than anyone expects, because this morning, at 4:44 a.m., the bells of the Vatican tolled without cause. No death, no mass, no declaration. Just the bells. It is an ancient superstition among older Vatican staff that when the bells toll without reason, it means one of the 7 seals has stirred. It sounds apocalyptic because it is, and it gets worse. A document heavily redacted was leaked to the Osservatore Romano. It is believed to be a draft homily Pope Leo XIV was preparing before his fall. It reads, "The time has come to purify. The bride is stained. The halls are hallowed. If I must fall to awaken the watchmen, then so be it. For Christ himself was struck that the world might rise. May I too be struck down if it means his house shall live again." These are not the words of a weak pontiff. They are the words of a man who knew. He knew he was being watched. He knew forces were moving within his own walls. He knew the fall would come not just his body, but the very structures of the Church, and Tagle may be his answer or his replacement. But the most chilling sign came not from Rome, but from Fatima. Yesterday afternoon, a strange phenomenon was reported by pilgrims at the shrine of Our Lady. Clouds above the sanctuary shaped into the form of a crown, and rays of sunlight pierced through it like thorns. Dozens of visitors claimed to feel an electric heat on their foreheads during the apparition. One even collapsed, whispering, "She is crying again for her son's house." The Bishop of Laria Fatima has neither confirmed nor denied the reports, but private Marian scholars note that this mirrors a lost portion of the third secret of Fatima, long rumored to speak of the collapse of a white city within which a bishop will be struck and 2 shepherds will rise, one with blood, one with mercy. Is Leo the bishop struck? Is Tagle one of the shepherds? And who is the second? Some say Parolin. Others whisper a name that's never been spoken in public, but is often passed among insiders. The one who walks cloaked in red but has not yet been revealed. A cardinal who has never been seen in press conferences, never given interviews. But who holds keys to the Vatican archives? A shadow cardinal, custodian of ancient codes. Some say he is tasked with guarding a box beneath the papal tombs sealed since 1139, containing the scroll of Malachi's final line, the prophecy of the last pope, and what if we are now living under him? Pope Leo XIV, a transitional pope, a prophetic bridge, Tagle, a shepherd ascending, Parolin, a strategist waiting, the Church, caught between mercy and judgment, between the age of reform and the hour of reckoning. The bride of Christ is trembling, and yet she stands. For through the fire, through betrayal, through prophecy and persecution, she is still the beloved. And the Master is returning for a church not clothed in politics or pride, but in purity, power, and the wounds of the Lamb. And so we watch, and we wait for the next fall, for the next sign, for the voice of heaven to speak again. Then listen, beloved, for what comes next was not found in headlines, nor spoken from pulpits, but written in tears on the walls of heaven. That evening, as Rome tried to return to normal, something stirred beneath the apostolic palace. Deep within the catacombs past locked gates, known only to a handful of prelates, a torch was lit. Not the torches of ceremony, but the old kind, dipped in oil and sulfur, used only when electricity must not interfere with sacred vibrations. There, in the chamber of the chair, 6 men stood around a sealed marble slab. These were not cardinals, the world knew. They wore no red, no rings, no names, only the signet of Crux Veritatis, the cross of truth carved into the backs of their rosaries. One of them knelt, whispered 7 Latin words, Fiat voluntas tua, sicut in caelo. The stone slab began to tremble, for the first time. In over 600 years, the seal of Peter's tears was about to be broken. A protocol designed not for war, not for doctrine, but for the hour of apostolic collapse, when the Church could no longer trust its visible shepherds and had to turn to the hidden ones. These are not conspiracy. These are contingencies born of centuries of betrayal, schism, infiltration, and antichrists who wore the robes of bishops but spoke with the tongues of serpents. And yet, that exact moment, across the sea, in the Philippines, a child awoke from a dream screaming one phrase, "The white fire is coming." Tell the man who knelt with the wound in his heart. She had never seen Cardinal Tagle, never heard of the Pope. She was 7 years old. Her father recorded her dream and sent it to a nearby priest who posted it online. Within hours, it reached Rome. The video was flagged, downloaded, and buried by digital moderators. But not before a copy made it to the desk of Cardinal Tagle himself. He watched it, then stood. He walked not toward St. Peter's, but toward the prison cells beneath Castel Sant'Angelo. Cells used only during papal transitions or dark inquisitions. He asked for access. He said only this, "There is a name I must speak to." To this day, no one knows who he visited. But hours later, thunder struck the dome of St. Peter's not once, but 3 times, and in its echo, the Pietà cracked the marble sculpture of Mary holding her Son. The same masterpiece that has wept before plagues and trembled before assassinations now bore a fracture through Mary's heart. Security closed the basilica. Vatican art historians claimed it was mere pressure and time, but one elderly Monsignor who once served Pope Benedict XVI whispered to a Swiss guard, "No, this is the signum doloris, the sign of sorrows." It means the bride is bleeding from the womb. The next day, the Vatican officially denied all rumors, but a bird's-eye photo leaked to the press showed something that no amount of spin could explain. At precisely 6 a.m., as sunlight hit the cracked Pietà, a white dove landed on the shoulder of the Virgin statue, and it would not leave. It stayed as Mass began. It stayed as Mass ended. It stayed when choirs sang and incense rose and all eyes wept. Even when guards approached, the dove remained looking not at them, but toward the altar, toward the crucifix, toward the one who bled once, and prepares to come again. And this, dear children of the Church, is the moment we are living in, a world where the visible structures are trembling. A papacy marked by wounds and whispers, a shepherd rising from the east, a strategist waiting in the west, a bride stained by corruption, betrayal, and silence, and a groom whose eyes burn like fire, standing at the threshold of time, whispering, "Behold, I come soon, and my reward is with me." But here now is the part no one expected, the twist heaven hid from even the faithful. At exactly midnight, as Rome slept, the sealed marble beneath the chamber of the chair fully opened. Inside was not a document, not a weapon, not even a prophecy, but a mirror. And etched into the silver frame was this inscription in ancient Latin: "To eis Petrus, sed quid si Petrus non est unus." You are Peter. But what if Peter is not? For centuries we have looked to one man to lead the Church. But what if the hour has come for two? What if the lion and the dove must rise together, not as rivals, but as dual flames in the dark? One to burn with justice, one to breathe with mercy, one to strike, one to heal, a co-pacy not seen since the earliest days of the apostles, when Peter and Paul walked together, bled together, died together. A final sign that in the age of division, only unity divine, sacrificial, supernatural unity can save the bride. Not in power, not in politics, but in pierced hands, joined once more on the cross. For the groom is coming, and the veil is about to be lifted. Will the Church be ready? Will you? For as it is written, when the bride is pure, the heavens will shake. And when two shepherds speak as one voice, the gate shall open, and the King shall ride forth. The time is no longer near. It is now, and